Hello and welcome to the Week 5 Team Builder. My name is Scribbles. I'm coach of the Colorado Cavalions, and this week we're up against Joey and the Los Angeles Nidokings. You can see Joey's team here with the Dragapult, Celesteela, Weavile, Conkeldurr, Grimmsnarl, Jellicent, Donphan, Salazzle, Licky. Kind of going into the match here, I had done a little bit of scouting on Joey's particular style, and what I saw was that he wasn't too apt to approach setting rocks, and he was pretty apt to avoid allowing his opponent to set rocks. There's a lot of aggressive leads to prevent rocks from going up, a lot of offensive leads just in general. So that was one of the things that went into my team building process. Some other things I noticed about his team, kind of looking down, his speed tiers are really bimodal. So there's 3 Pokemon that are very fast. Dragapult, Weavile, and Salazzle all settle in the speed tiers between Zeraora and Serperior, who's my second fastest Pokemon. Aside from that, every other one of his Pokemon is 61 base speed or lower. So there's a huge gap. 56 base stat points between Salazzle and Celesteela, and then kind of 2 pretty strong groups. So there's some things that can be taken advantage. There's some advantage that I can take there with my team building. Aside from that, other things I noticed, his team's got a lot of priority, and priority's continuously being a thorn in my side. I have good speed tiers, but priority kind of mucks them all up. So I think a lot of his team's kind of built around, you don't really need to care as much about speed tiers if you've got good priority. And it's especially good priority against me. He has 2 Ice Shard users in Donphan and Weavile, and then Mach Punch from Conkeldurr is very good against me as well, just generally speaking. Outside of that, Pokemon on my team that I thought looked really good. I like Zeraora's matchup. I think physical Zeraora could do a lot of things provided I could remove Donphan. Could think of a mix set, something along those lines would also be good. Weezing is a good physical wall. It actually has pretty decent typing overall in the matchup as well. Really wanted to run Will-O-Wisp, Toxic Spike, Fairy, and any ground move. Like literally any ground move. Doesn't get any ground moves, Hidden Power's gone. Couldn't do that. His only ground resist for Joey's team is Celesteela. Everything else is neutral or weak to ground. So if I could somehow offset its flying type via Smackdown or Gravity, Landorus could have a lot of good time. Lots of damage, lots of work. Dragapult doesn't get Ice Beam, which is interesting. So it can't smack Lando-I quite as hard as it would otherwise, which is nice for me. Gyarados has a pretty good matchup between Dark and Water. My opponent also doesn't have a resist, so that's quite useful if I can get Gyarados set up. And then the only other thing that I really saw here was that his team's pretty heavily geared towards physical attackers. There's not many quality special attackers. Dragapult can go either way, but outside of that, really his only, I would say, good special attacker is Salazzle. Jellicent and Licky can obviously use special attacks, but they're not super threatening as attackers per se. For win cons for my team, like I mentioned, Dragon Dance, Gyarados, either Bulk Up or Calm Mind, Zera both seem pretty good. Hazard Stack also seems somewhat viable. His only removal that I haven't seen him use removal very much at all. Donphan's Rapid Spin is obviously very solid removal. Conkeldurr also gets Defog. I feel as if Dragapult or Celesteela, one of them, gets Defog, but if they're using Defog on either one of those Pokemon, I'm perfectly happy about it. So I thought Hazard Stack might also be pretty good, just kind of wear him down and just kind of pivot around. For win cons on my opponent's team, Nasty Plot Salazzle, I think looks great against me. Zeraora is probably my best answer, or some sort of Scarf Lando-I or something like that. But both of those can be, Lando-I especially, can be dealt with pretty easily with the rest of his roster via Ice Shard from Weavile and Donphan, and I'd have to bring Scarf Lando-I, which is just horrible against Ice Shard. So I didn't think that was a great choice for me. And the other one that looked pretty good to me was Dragon Dance Dragapult. It doesn't have coverage necessarily to hit Galarian Weezing, but if it can weaken Galarian Weezing, it has a pretty good chance to just do a lot of damage because I don't have great answers to particularly what coverage Dragapult could run. So Dragapult has a lot of great coverage options. And it does get Psychic Feint, so potentially break through Galarian Weezing. So going on to my team specifically here, starting off with Galarian Weezing, I think it had a really good matchup. I needed something to deal with Conkeldurr. I don't have a lot of physical walls that can, in particular, deal with Conkeldurr. So my best physical walls are, as sad as it is, are Weezing, of course. But outside of that, it's Cobalion, who just gets wrecked by Fighting Stab, and Superior, kind of, but it's a really poor excuse for a physical wall. So I think Galarian Weezing was always coming. The thing that to decide for me, well, there are two things really. The defenses between physical and special. There were some investments that I looked into to help me survive attacks from Salazzle, but ultimately I realized that I wasn't going to do anything when I was in against Salazzle, so I should probably just switch out regardless. And the extra physical bulk really, really helps me switch into Conkeldurr multiple times. And then the ability. So I could have gone between neutralizing gas and Levitate, and I went back and forth a couple times. The advantage of Levitate is it gives me a great switch into Donphan. Donphan really, it can knock off, which would be annoying, but it's not going to be able to do a lot of damage if I'm Levitate. It also, if I'm Levitate, means that Conkeldurr has a really... It can't hit me with Earthquake or high horsepower or any ground coverage. And same goes for the rest of his team. The rest of his team doesn't care as much, but Conkeldurr really has nothing outside of ground coverage to hit me very strongly, with the exception of Facade. And that's why I ended up going with Neutralizing Gas. So a Flame Orb Gut set with Facade could actually 2-hit KO Weezing, regardless of my investment. And so that was super risky, because he could speed creep and outspeed my Weezing. And if I pivoted in, I really wouldn't have anything to do aside from just get 2-hit KO'd, which would be a huge problem. Neutralizing Gas kind of offset that. It meant the calc's, I think, actually wrong on this for the Pokemon Showdown, so I was hoping maybe that would come into play as well. But Neutralizing Gas does eliminate Guts, so you don't get the 1.5 attack boost on top of the boost that Facade provides, which is good. And aside from that, and maybe I'm wrong here too, I don't know. It made it so that I could prevent Prankster from Grimmsnarl if I was switching into that. Will-O-Wisp onto a non-Guts Conkeldurr was pretty good. Toxic Spite's just in general kind of for the hazard stack strategy that I'm going for, backed up with the 2 win cons that I mentioned earlier. And then Strange Steam is just good coverage. It hits Conkeldurr really hard. It hits Dragapult pretty hard. It's useless against Salazzle and Celesteela, which are huge, huge threats to me. And it also hits Grimmsnarl pretty hard. I've gone up against Grimmsnarl with basically this set before, and it does pretty well. The speed is, it outspeeds the standard Conkeldurr set that comes up in the calc. I originally was just going to speed creep Celesteela, but a little bit more speed because of what I saw in the calc, and I was like, oh, if they run that and I'm 1 point slower, I'll be really upset. Next set is Zeraora. This is a Life Orb bulk up set with knockoff Plasma Fist and Quick Attack. The rationale behind Quick Attack was I originally had Grass Knot there. The problem is that Grass Knot doesn't do quite enough damage to get the KO, and without Life Orb, like say I ran Sugar Berry or something to help deal with Donphan, I just don't pick up a lot of KOs. So I went back and forth on this set quite a bit between Life Orb, Shuka. I had Lum for a second, but I realized that if I'm in with this and the opponent has time to get a burn or something off, they could probably also just get a lot of damage off on me, which would be equally as bad because of all the priority my opponent has. So this particular set, I barely miss out on a few KOs with knockoff Plasma Fist. And then there's also always the possibility that the opponent is running either a Sash or, something along the lines of a damage resist berry or a surprisingly bulky set. And Quick Attack is nice because it picks up the KO against things like Weavile if it's Choice Scarf and switches in. I also get priority against any weakened Pokemon. I basically was never clicking my third move here, my third attacking move, and so quick attack just gave me a little bit of upside, so I ended up running that. Speed outspeeds Dragapult by 1 point, max attack, and then just the token amount dumped into defense. I actually didn't end up doing my life orb damage because I kept switching items. So 319. This set is better if you have 319 HP. So that's a better set than what I have. Next is Vaporeon. This is Cleric and a Wish user. So the idea behind this set is I wanted to be pretty aggressive with Gyarados in particular, and basically the rest of my team as well, just trying to spread status and not really caring if I absorb status, because I could have Vaporeon in the back to heal Bell, provide Wish support to the team. So basically this was just going to be the reset button on my win cons, and then hopefully from there I could continue to sweep. Scald KOs Salazzle if it's uninvested, which is nice. Leftover just for some recovery. Max HP to give Wish the most oomph, for lack of a better term. And then the speed here, 4 speed instead of 4 special attack or something else. This outspeeds max speed modest Salazzle if it's paralyzed. You might be wondering how I could paralyze Salazzle, but we'll get to that here in a second. Nothing else too crazy on this set. This is an interesting one. So Gyarados here, kind of the standard Dragon Dance Waterfall Crunch, because it has really, really good, perfect neutral coverage and pretty good super effective coverage against the opponent's team. Did not choose to run Substitute because I was worried about Infiltrator from Dragapult, and it's also very difficult to get a Substitute up when you have a Prankstermon on the other side. I could Substitute, but then I wouldn't get a boost, and then I wouldn't be able to kill the opponent's Mon. The Substitute just doesn't really work very well against Prankster. You kind of need the speed advantage. So I ended up going with Facade, and the reason for this is it prevents a Will-O-Wisp Grimmsnarl from being a reliable answer to what I'm trying to do. So in theory, I could Dragon Dance on my opponent, switching into Grimmsnarl. And Grimmsnarl goes for a Will-O-Wisp to, in theory, permanently cripple my Gyarados. I can just continue setting up, if I have Facade, to a point where, in theory, I could just sweep entirely through the game. If I get enough boosts such that Waterfall and Crunch are still doing good damage, and I have Facade to kill anything that basically isn't weak to one of those attacks. That was the idea behind this set. The Wakan Berry is there for Choice Scarf Dragapult, which with Thunderbolt would kill me otherwise. The nice thing about Gyarados' speed tier is it does actually outspeed max speed Dragapult at +1, and it hits 430 at max speed. You could go a little bit less. The reason I'm on this much higher is I think with this particular set at +2, I outsped Choice Scarf Dragapult, something along those lines. And I really didn't need the investment anywhere else, and I wasn't going to take things away from attack. There weren't any survival calcs that looked particularly appealing, so just basically went max with just a token amount in HP. Next up is Cobalion. This is a lead-ish set, kind of banking off of the trend that I noticed from my opponent in terms of aggressively preventing hazards from going up. I'm hoping to potentially lead this against the Salazzle and just click Thunderwave turn 1 and try and cripple Salazzle, because it's really quite frightening to my team. Especially the team I brought, which is kind of weird. You see 2 water types and you think that it shouldn't be that threatening, but it has really good coverage with its poison type moves, and it just does a lot of damage at a really good speed tier that's difficult for me to deal with without a Choice Scarfer or something that can just tank a hit. Vaporeon is my kind of assigned switch in to Salazzle because it is a special wall that don't think gets 3-hit KO'd by anything, but it's much nicer if it's just removed from the game and I don't have to deal with it. So Thunderwave Akaberry is basically for that matchup. I have Volt Switch and 60 special attack. This will break the sub on max HP Celesteela and allow me to pivot out into Zeraora or something that can threaten Celesteela a bit more. Stealth Rock is there to get Stealth Rocks up. Flash Cannon allows me to hit Donphan and Kinkeldr a little bit harder than basically anything I had. It also hits Weavile really hard. chance to lower special defense. If you're going with a special set, it's good stab. The investment here is pretty heavily slanted towards physical defense. This can switch into Weavile pretty easily. There's obviously things like low kick that Weavile can run in terms of coverage, but even that's not doing a ton to me. So this is kind of a dedicated Weavile check, and hopefully a lure type set for Salazzle to get it paralyzed and effectively removed from the game. Last set on the team is Lando I with Earth Power, Knockoff, Smackdown, Grass Knot. So Smackdown allows me to hit his entire team, or at least neutral damage with Earth Power, and Sheer Force Earth Power from max special attack. Landorus is very good. Grass Knot allows me to chip away at Donphan. If I can remove Donphan, I think Zeraora has a good chance to win the game. So 3 of my Pokemon have really good coverage for Donphan, and then Weezing can cripple it as well. Knockoff hits Dragapult really strongly. I think Yachi Berry was realistically the only viable set I could bring on Lando I. I still think Lando I is good, and I think it's always going to be good, basically. But without Yachi Berry, I just die to Weavile. Donphan, if I have any chip, is killing me, which is not what I want when I'm trying to kill it with Grass Knot. So this basically gives me a chance to get some damage off, maybe pick up a surprise KO on either of the Ice Sharders on my opponent's team, and then hopefully from there that opens the door for some of my other sweepers. You'll notice, I guess I kind of glazed over this. I mentioned it in looking at the teams, but no speed investment on Cobalion. I don't need any speed investment to outspeed everything except the Pokemon that I wasn't outspeeding anyway. No, very little speed investment. This outspeeds Celesteela is all that this does, and it doesn't take much because Celesteela is base 61. So kind of opens the door to run very little speed and get a lot of extra bulk for both of these Pokemon, which could be valuable for me. So that's the team. Looking forward to the battle, and let's see how it goes. A lot of coverage, gives him Wish Passer, Cleric. It basically can do all the same things that Vaporeon can do, alongside a few other kind of neat things. But it's not Salazzle, and it's not Dragapult, both of which I think are very good Pokemon. Salazzle good in general, specifically against my team. I think it's really good. And then Dragapult, who I think is just great overall. I can kind of understand Dragapult. I have one of the only Pokemon that'll outspeed Dragapult and Zeraora. It kind of struggles against Knockoff. It's difficult to switch in on Pokemon. Gyarados, who I've been using a lot in this league, has Crunch, and it gets outsped by +1 Dragon Dance. My team kind of relies on that, so I kind of understand it. Looking at the initial lead, I've got Weezing, who could just get up Toxic Spikes that would presumably be there to stay. Only other lead would possibly be Cobalion, but I don't really like Cobalion as a lead because it loses to a few things on my opponent's team. It doesn't do anything to Donphan, so I ended up going with Thunder Wave on it. I considered Toxic for a bit to potentially give me something to do in the Donphan matchup. I went with Thunder Wave because of Salazzle. So Weezing looks like the strongest lead for me, and that's what I'm going to end up going with. I put out Weezing against Kinkeldr. So I have neutralizing gas here, so if he gets burned, he doesn't get the stat boost. So like Earthquake, for instance, will still do damage as if he's burned. So if he's burned from like a Flame Orb or something like that, it's not going to be able to do a lot of damage to me, and I have Will-O-Wisp. So my plan here is to just go for the burn, and if I get the burn, then it's not really going to be able to damage me with Earthquake. The only thing it can really do is Facade, and that's not going to do that much damage, and then I could fire off Strange Steam to do a lot of damage in return. So I just go ahead and Will-O-Wisp here. Opponent pivots out into Licky Licky. I miss my Will-O-Wisp. Probably good. You'd rather have Licky Licky Toxic than burned in any case. This seemed like a perfect opportunity for me to get up hazards. I probably outspeed Licky Licky. If it's uninvested, it'd have to be speed creeping me pretty hard. So I'd likely get up at least 1 T-Spike. So I'm going to go for that. Opponent ends up going for Seismic Toss. I'm not worried about Seismic Toss at all because I can just Pain Split back all of my health. So I go ahead and get another Toxic Spike. I'm still not worried about anything. I'm confident enough here that I can launch an attack and just get some chip off just to kind of see what the item on Licky Licky is. If it's not leftovers, then you have to suspect it's, Custap, maybe. That's kind of an off the wall. I don't even know what else Licky Licky would run, but I basically did want to confirm the item, and I really had no downside here since this entire team's at full health. Pain Split's going to either net me a lot of damage or get me a lot of HP back, and both are great for me. And with no hazards up on my side, I'm free to switch around as I please after Pain Splitting up. So I go ahead and Pain Split here, which gets me pretty high back up. I'm up to 72 and they're down in the 50s. So we're basically even, and Licky Licky's not going to win this 1v1. So at this point, I'm assuming that my opponent will switch out, knowing that this isn't going to work out for them. I confirm leftovers. So I go for Will-O-Wisp. So this kind of is the reverse of what we were talking about earlier. I'd rather have it toxic and have 2 layers of toxic spikes up. So that looks good. But then I predict a switch out to, physical, mixed attacker, physical attacker, physical attacker, physical attacker, physical attacker. Will-O-Wisp looks pretty free. Realistically, I probably should have just kept clicking Will-O-Wisp. I end up switching out to Cobalion to try and get my rocks up, and my opponent goes into Celesteela. I'm not sure. I guess Celesteela can start setting up on Weezing, and Weezing really can't do anything to Celesteela in return aside from potentially getting a burn, which isn't that impactful. I went out to Cobalion, like I said, to get the rocks up, and my opponent pivots to Celesteela, potentially trying to threaten Weezing out because it's just not going to win that 1v1, and I could, in theory, just click Will-O-Wisp for the rest of the game, and there's not really anything my opponent can do at that point. So I think the switch for both of us made sense. I happen to have Thunderwave, and I also happen to outspeed everything that's not, I'm at 252 speed, anything that's not a, Choice Scarf or something Celesteela. So Thunderwave is super free, and Thunderwaving Celesteela sounds great to me. It really reduces its effectivity in terms of a sub-leech seed set or something like that. So I pick up the Paralysis, and they go for Substitute. And this is playing really, really well for me. Right now I've got Celesteela paralyzed. My entire team's very healthy. The closest thing to being weakened is Weezing at 50%, and I have a lot of times I can switch Weezing in. And now I have Cobalion in with a Paralysis, and I know that Volt Switch will likely break the Substitute. It only breaks up to max HP, so if he has a lot of special defense, it won't. So here I get my Stealth Rocks up because I'm not concerned about anything Celesteela can do specifically to me at this point. Flamethrower does damage, but it's not a ton of damage, and I don't really need to maintain HP on Cobalion at this point. I just would rather get up the rocks to start chipping away at his entire team. So my opponent gets paralyzed, which is lucky for me. Probably Leech Seed was the worst thing they can do, and I was going to Volt Switch out the next turn anyway, so not too impactful. If they have Leech Seed Protect or something like that, they get a bit of HP off me. But at the end of the day, this interaction, unless they call a Volt Switch and Substitute after a Volt Switch, is going to end with me getting out of here with the Substitute gone. So I take this opportunity to Volt Switch into Gyarados. This is somewhat of a chance to set up. Leech Seed would be annoying, but they're going to be hard-pressed to stay in with Celesteela. I will always break the sub with Waterfall. If Leech Seeds hits, they get some HP back, but I have Wish in the back to always heal my Gyarados, and I have a few decent opportunities to switch Gyarados in. Donphan really can't do much to Gyarados. The thing that Vaporeon's going to bring in from the opponent is likely Kelder, so I guess that's kind of a risky Wish Pass, but I feel like I can get Gyarados back up healthy, so I'm going to take the opportunity to set up early and maybe do some work. Unfortunately for my opponent, Leech Seed misses. If you factor in Paralysis and the Leech Seed accuracy, it's in my opponent's favor for Leech Seed to hit, obviously, but it's not incredibly egregious at that point. but it does allow me to get a free setup. So I get a Dragon Dance off, and my opponent goes for an Air Slash. So the Air Slash is an interesting play. I guess it does allow my opponent to gauge my set, what my investment is. It can't flinch because I'm faster. It does give me a free setup. I guess it does check for if I am just trying to get damage off, if I'm like a Choice Banded set or something along those lines. But I do get the setup. So now I'm +1. I go for the Waterfall, and my rationale behind the Waterfall here was that if he was a specially defensive set, which I couldn't tell because the substitute broke on the Volt Switch, it was probably physically defensive, but I could get rolls that would break the substitute for Volt Switch. So if he was specially defensive, Waterfall 2-hit KO'd there, and I wanted to avoid Leech Seed if at all possible. And +1 outspeeds everything except Scarf on my opponent's team, aside from Prankster shenanigans, which is kind of what I'm angling towards with my Gyarados, to be perfectly honest. So Waterfall reveals that it is very physically defensive, which I think is a good bring against my team. So now that I know it's physically defensive, full para sucks for my opponent. Again, the Thunder Wave wasn't even for Celesteela, but I was just in position to use it, and paralysis is kind of magical in a way. And now I've got like a para flinch thing going on with Gyarados, which is pretty advantageous to me. So I guess Waterfall para is 30 and 30, so it's 0.7 that they attack, 0.7. It's actually in my favor for them to not attack. It's 51-49. Still feel bad about it, obviously. So here I'm going to go ahead and Dragon Dance up because I don't 2-hit KO, and my opponent is paralyzed again, so that's definitely not in my favor. Waterfall brings him down 50%. He does get the Leech Seed off and does hit, so that isn't in my opponent's favor, or isn't in my favor, but I'm already hacking him pretty good, and Gyarados has had a knack for this lately. He will die after another Waterfall here, at the HP he's at, so I just go ahead and finish off with the Waterfall. Pick up the Moxie boost, and now I'm +2, +3, +2, and Grimmsnarl comes in, gets Toxic, and gets the rocks. So from here, Waterfall is a KO, and I'm thinking that my opponent's best play is to get a status off. There's always chances that I crit or something like that, so I make it an aggressive play here, that since I'm in a good position, I feel that I can, and I've always got the backup plan of healing Gyarados back up later. I go for the Facade, assuming that I'm going to get hit with a Will-O-Wisp, and my opponent goes for Reflect. Looking back, I think Reflect is definitely the good play on my opponent's part. I think they survive everything after Reflect, and they still have Prankster to status me or anything they want after that. My best play there, probably I still want to get off damage. It's probably to go for a Waterfall. Reflect's still going to go up. They're still going to survive. But it makes the next turn a little bit more awkward for them as they die to everything that I could go for. Facade, Waterfall, anything along those lines. And then I also don't reveal Facade, which could be crucial for what my opponent does in subsequent turns. So from here at +3, Waterfall, even through Reflect, will kill, even after they get the Leaf Seed. So I pick up that kill, get to +4, +2. Weavile comes in. Weavile outspeeds me here. Knockoff kills me. I've got Cobalion at full health. It is a perfect switch into Weavile in basically all instances. Weavile takes the rocks, takes the Toxic status. This is a great turn for me overall. I switch up to Cobalion. I get a justified boost from Knockoff, but I don't have any physical attacks, so it doesn't matter. In this position, I can go for Flash Cannon, which picks up the KO. I can go for Volt Switch to try and maintain momentum, but there's the risk of Donphan coming in. I just end up clicking Flash Cannon. I'm ahead. There's no need to make predictions or anything along those lines. So I get some damage on Donphan. You can see it does 35% here, and then the 6 from Toxic. I Flash Cannon again, it's 37. I get an Aguac Berry and heal up, and they click Rapid Spin to remove the hazards. Earthquake doesn't kill me from this range. Even Max Attack Adamant, I have enough defense investment that it just barely misses out on the KO. But the interesting thing is that Flash Cannon roll 35-37, and you'll notice they end the turn at 37 HP. Getting this Flash Cannon roll is helpful. Let me just go ahead and actually confirm that damage count now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, Earthquake does max 65%, so I am out of range. Getting this roll with Flash Cannon, which I do, is helpful because it keeps my HP up, which is really nice against Kinkelder, which allows me to go for a Thunder Wave here to pick up a status. If I was lower, he could Mach Punch to pick up a KO, but with the additional health, I think the only thing that killed me was... so they ended up being Iron Fist. I think Drain Punch doesn't kill me. I think it needs to be... yeah, it needs to be close combat to kill me. So if I was at a lower HP, Mach Punch could kill me. I wouldn't be able to get this Thunder Wave off. So I get a roll, which is nice for me. Paralyzed into full paralysis, and then I just Volt Switch because why not? Bringing Wheezing because this is my dedicated check to Kunkelder, and it reveals that it is actually Earthquake. So probably would have been better off with Levitate, but Strange Steam at that point doesn't actually pick up the KO, but it gets them weak enough that I can finish them with anything. They switch out to Licky Licky. It's probably their only winning play is to not lose Kunkelder. But the unfortunate thing about this for my opponent is that I actually do survive. Licky Licky is a momentum drain, basically, for my opponent. And the previous turn, I'll go back real quick. I actually survive Mach Punch after Earthquake here because Wheezing 4 times resists and is ridiculous. So it can't Mach Punch me here, and Strange Steam's going to take him down to such a low HP that he can't do anything. I don't think there's any play my opponent can make here that's good. Weavile dies to Strange Steam. I think basically right here the game's over. It's just differential, really. And we kind of go through a really long song and dance here about maintaining differential, which I felt kind of bad about, but my differential is pretty low, considering my record, and I really wanted to get my differential up. And so this is just a long series of me getting up Toxic. The reason I got Toxic Spikes up there is in case this had Heal Bell, I wanted to ensure that his team was getting chipped slowly over time. So Pain Split up. We just kind of go back and forth. I go to Vaporeon. Licky Licky hurts itself in Confusion. I don't think that really matters. If I have a wish, opponent wishes, I wish up Wheezing. So we're just going to go back and forth for a while. I go to Vaporeon. I wish again. My opponent reveals Toxic, and so I guess at this point, from Joey's perspective, it's not over because he can just keep healing and Toxic my entire team. Unfortunately for him, I do have Heal Bell on Vaporeon, so it's not going to do anything, basically. I get Gyarados back up to full health. This continues on for a few turns. At one point, I go into Landorus on a Seismic Toss. I wanted to scout if it had Ice Beam, so I end up pivoting back out from Landorus into Vaporeon. It went for Toxic, so I'm assuming it doesn't have Ice Beam. I never found out the fourth move. I'm kind of dirtling around here, and again, I feel a little bad about it, but I really wanted to keep my differential up. So here, I'm assuming my opponent's not going to go for... It's going to go for Earthquake or Thunder Punch or something like that. It had revealed Thunder Punch before. So to try and accelerate the game, I switch out to Landorus because Earth Power is going to do a lot of damage. And I go ahead and use that. It doesn't kill. They hit me with Ice Punch. Yachi Berry, I survive. And then I pivot out so that Mach Punch can't kill me. And the game continues on for a while until eventually I am able to kill Kinkelder, and then from here it just kind of unravels over the next few turns. I don't think I was in danger of losing any Mons the rest of this game because I just pivot out. Yeah, so I think the rest of the game is pretty straightforward. Gyarados eventually comes in, gets the last kill, just because it was the quickest way to do it with Facade. I just pick up the 2-8 KO from here. And that's the end of the game. So it was a really good game for me, I guess. There was some hacks early. I've had 3 weeks in a row where I've gotten the better end of the luck. I dropped Fish-Rachi. Like, it should be the opposite. It should be what's happening. But Gyarados has been getting flinches on the regular, and this week it helped me. Last week it helped me. The week before, I basically stole the victory. So I know that the luck's going to swing back. I think there's still improvements that need to be made to the team. I still have one ad drop. I'm not sure what I need to do with it. My schedule coming up is really difficult. So I play Frost, who's also undefeated at 4-0. After that, I think I play Hat, who's 3-2 and has a really good differential. And then I'll play Adamant, who I think was the best performer in Mystery Egg. I think he had some bad luck in the playoffs. Funnily enough, the two people in the running for best performer in Mystery Egg are both on my schedule because PCZ is my week 10 opponent. And then week 9, I play G-Blaze, who's new to the league, and I mean, who knows where he falls. So 5 really tough games. I think it's entirely possible that I still end up 5-5. I hope I don't, but I think it's still within the realm of possibility. So, good game to Joey. Sorry about the hack. Sorry about maintaining differential. It would have been fun to see how it worked out. I'm interested to see your team. But that's going to be it for me this week. Look forward to next week. We're going to have a really good matchup with Frost. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll see you then.